In this video, we're going to talk about how we went from this, a Magnus that I don't think is very good, to this, Niv Mizzet, through reskinned through the use of physical art and paint to become the Magnus the Red that I think it deserves to be. Approximately a year and a half ago, we got Warhammer X, a crossover between two of my favourite things, Magic the Gathering and Warhammer 40,000. And I was hugely positive about these. I reached out to Wizards and was lucky enough for them to respond and work with me to do gameplay and reveals for them. I was head over heels in love with the designs that they made. Ethan Fleischer and his team absolutely encapsulated the thematic concerns of Warhammer 40k and made all of the characters feel like direct counterparts to their tabletop miniatures. However, fast forwarding to a year and a half, I've got some thoughts. Firstly, there's one card that I just did not really think was good enough. More on that for the rest of the video. And the other thing that I've realised is that I wish the cards were slightly more complicated and weird. As you move into Doctor Who and Fallout, we saw all sorts of things like radiation counters and playing with the Exile Zone. There's so many things that they could have done with Warhammer that they sort of avoided initially. It very does much feel like the first Universes Beyond, where they were trying to be a bit simpler with their approach. I think it worked for the most part. I just wish they got a little bit quirkier with some of the chaos and demon stuff. Yeah, we're talking about Magnus the Red. Magnus the Red is the Demon Primarch, the leader of the Thousand Suns. He's a 4/5 flying creature in Magic for 5 mana, who, when he hits people, you make 3/3 spawn tokens, and then your spells cost 1 less. Your instants and sorcery spells cost 1 less for each token you control that's a creature. My problem with that is that Magnus the Red is so much more powerful than that in 40k and in the Horus Heresy. He is the Crimson King. He is the most powerful sorcerer in the universe, other than perhaps the godlike being that is the Emperor. But the Emperor gets punked and stuck on a golden toilet to be a corpse the rest of eternity. Meanwhile, Magnus is sent to be a super chicken god. So, you know, sucks to be you, Emperor. But if any character should have got a bit more focus, a bit more power, and a bit more quirk to it, in a game where we cast spells and attack our opponents with magic, it should have been the Crimson King. It should have been the leader of the Sorcerer Warriors of the Thousand Suns. And that's not just because he's my favourite of the Big Daddy Primarchs. I was so disappointed with not being able to play a Magnus the Red deck that I thought would be interesting, mainly because I don't think his mechanics are that interesting. I mean, mechanically he does a thing that is mildly interesting, but not quite at the power level that I wanted Magnus to be. I instead decided to make my own. This is Damaride, an artist, an altarist, someone who makes art onto magic cards using physical mediums like acrylic paints. That's right, we're going full circle here, baby. We're going from like magic card to painted magic card using the same paints that we'd use to paint the models. I've worked with this particular Neuromancer in the past on my Altered Sleeves. That was a promotion on my Patreon, and I approached her looking to commission her to paint me a new Magnus. I showed her off My Magnus, a model that I painted almost 3 years ago now, where he's topless and he's swole. Magnus was one of my first competitive armies in 40k, playing him in this chaos mishmash. Probably part of what drew me so much to him before even reading about his lore and the novels that surround his stories. So this video is about that, about painting another card to look like Magnus, so I can play Magnus as my commander and have Magnus actually do incredible feats of magic as opposed to just making things cost less. It's about bringing two hobbies that I love, both Warhammer and Magic, together in multiple ways through art and game pieces that I've loved for decades and game pieces that I've loved through becoming attached to them over the last couple of years. There's also an element of irony that I'm absolutely wanting to upfront note to begin with. I'm saying that the version of Magnus that they made in the Warhammer X is boring, is what I'm saying. And what I really mean is not powerful enough for my own power fantasies around one of my favourite characters from Warhammer. Ultimately, I actually think that Firemind can be quite a boring commander. He is one that you only play at powered up tables and you combo him with Curiosities, Ophidian Eyes and similar. I'm looking to have that kind of magic when I suit up Magnus the Red, the Crimson King of the Thousand Suns. I absolutely acknowledge that in essence the design of Magnus the Red in the Warhammer X is probably more interesting from a depowered and gameplay perspective than Firemind, who goes infinite with a ham sandwich. This is very much me just jamming together two things I love, two different eras of nostalgia into one little bundle of joy through the manifestations of an artist that I wanted to work with. Take all of this with a pinch of salt as we move on. This video is kind of brought to you by Damaride. She's not sponsoring this video particularly. I paid her for the commission of the art that you're about to see, but I'll play a little ditty later on about her Patreon, because I'm going to link to it in the description below. So if you want to get hold of her and start using her for commission pieces of your own, or at least to get altered sleeves and similar from her, you can use the Patreon link down below. I'm going to plug it a couple times throughout the video. But first, let's unpack what the current Magnus does and whether it actually fits the canonical power level of Magnus. His first ability, Unearthly Power, to make things cost less when you have a larger token collection of creatures makes sense in some ways. We see Magnus on multiple occasions use entire cults of people. He burns them out and uses their latent psychic force to amplify his own. He does this to transcend through space and time, through the warp. He uses it to teleport a planet into real space out of the immaterium. He does all sorts of incredible feats by channeling the focus of many people into himself to heighten his powers. That said, it's not the first thing I think of when I think of Magnus. He can do pretty crazy shit without the need for 100 bodies to waste. And then the Blade of Magnus, the end of his spear, which is also depicted here on Commander Sphere from the same product, from the Warhammer decks. There have been multiple editions of 40k that when Magnus hits someone and kills them, he turns them into a spawn, this token here. Again, making spawn via physical combat is not something you would say is not like Magnus. It fits mechanically what he's done on the tabletop for decades at this point, sure, but again, it's not the first thing you think of. Even just from a mechanical perspective, Magnus has done so many more interesting things in 40k on the tabletop, even before we delve deep into what he is within the canon. For example, last edition he knew all of the spells, inverted commas. That was all of the spells that were available to anyone within his faction. Normally you'd pick 2 from, at the time, 3 different psychic trees. That's 16 options. But no, Magnus just knew them all. He's all about knowledge, understanding, and having access to every bit of knowledge you possibly could, and then utilizing that as a weapon. Magnus the Red leads a legion of sorcerers. He is the most powerful psychic being amongst the Primarchs, the progenitors of the Space Marine legions, the gene-enhanced, psychic, chaos-imbued children of the Emperor that were used as the template for the Astartes project, for the Space Marines that were used to push mankind across the stars and take the Emperor's great crusade to new heights. Magnus is so incredibly fucking smart and powerful that he is aware of his own psychic ability from inception. When he's in his little tank being grown like a little embryo baby, he's talking to the Emperor through his mind powers. When we first see him fully formed and grown up during the heresy, he gets into a fight with 2 corrupted and ancient Eldar Titans. These are things that are huge. He kills one of them just using his mind powers from a distance, because he's that badass. We're told that they're losing a fight against a green-skinned Gargant, a huge war machine that towers over the battlefield. It's the size of a skyscraper. Magnus stands against it, a giant in a metaphorical sense, and destroys it with his powers through the manifestation of warp, fire, and flame. This guy is an absolute monster when it comes to burning the shit out of people, using power drawn from the immaterium, drawn from the warp, drawn from the world that exists beneath the surface of our own. But of course, he's not just some badass, super psychic, powerful mage man. He's also a bit of an idiot. His own hubris is his downfall. Araman tries to warn him and the rest of the Thousand Sons that they can't rely upon their powers forever. He trades one of his eyes, like Odin in Norse mythology, for more information and more knowledge to save his people, because the Thousand Sons are infested with a disease, if you will, a psychic disease that makes their flesh warp and change and become like sort of like demons. He then believes he can just move through the immaterium, through the warp as much and as far as he wants to without it ever causing problems. And boy does it cause problems. There's this adage in 40k that Magnus did nothing wrong, but it's just not true. Magnus did like fucking everything wrong. He's an idiot. He's not perfect. He's just an incredibly powerful, arrogant asshole, and that's kind of why I love him. In many ways, he's the archetypal blue mage. I just wish his card did something a bit more like that. Enter stage left, Niv Mizzet the Firemind. He's such a cocky motherfucker that his flavor text is some algebra shit that spells out the word genius sideways. It's so dumb, but I love it. Long ago, when I first got into Commander, around 2009, pre the precons being built, there were 2 decks that I played regularly, Niv Mizzet the Firemind and Scion of the Ur-Dragon. Yeah, I played 2 different dragon decks. 1, because it was cooler than Horde of Notions, the only other 5-color rare that I owned, and 2, because Niv Mizzet was a fun, powerful rare that I just got in my From the Vault Dragons. I played Niv with every possible combo under the sun, with counter magic and removal spells attached to it, and some other synergies like firing Eldrazi out of Mercurial Chemister when that came around and got printed. I played Niv for years, and I put it down mainly because he's a bit, derivative. A bit, that's maybe not the word. You end up just curiosity comboing everyone quite regularly. But I've wanted to rebuild Niv for a while, and when I was last looking at rebuilding Niv as a high-powered, not quite CDH, but like top power level combo deck, I realized that this boisterous dragon wizard who uses knowledge as power, who uses knowledge as a weapon, is more like Magnus than the Magnus card we got. This Magnus card in many ways does something a bit more mechanically interesting than old Niv, but it doesn't manifest what I think of Magnus when I think of him. Him using knowledge that other people just don't possess and can't possess, the infinite omniscience of the universe, and just channeling it into raw rage and power and wrecking you with it. You know, like drawing your whole deck and machine gunning down a table. That sounds more like Magnus than Magnus does. And that's where Damaride came in. I've worked with her before on these altar sleeves that we've used as part of my Patreon promotions, so I contacted her and asked her if she would like to alter one of my favourite commanders to look like one of my favourite Primarchs, and she was absolutely up for the challenge. We see that she's blocked out the original art and then sketched out the overall look of what Magnus is going to end up looking like, and it's based upon the shot that I sent, an upward angle looking at Magnus that I own, the Magnus model that has no armor upon his chest. He's bare-chested because he doesn't need armor when he's fighting people with pure knowledge and psychic might. She's using a wet palette like I would use to paint miniatures, and she's using acrylic paints that you can use to paint miniatures. Honestly, I've considered myself trying to alter some cards, maybe doing some border extensions to start with, to have another crossover, because I love painting and I love magic, and the idea of being able to actually paint onto my magic cards is something I need to put some time aside and try it. But miniature painting and painting 2D art are two very different things, even if there is this wonderful crossover that is thematically relevant, considering we're talking about the crossover between Magic the Gathering and Warhammer 40k. There's also something wonderful about getting someone to paint an altar for you via the physical medium of actually doing the work, and also having video documentation like this of it, and then being lucky enough myself to be able to put this out on the internet for other people to look at and watch. I don't know, I'm a lucky person in that regard, I guess. But what I mean is, Wizards of the Coast have kind of taken away from altarists. The altering of magic cards is not a new thing. This is not something special that we've done for the first time. The altering of a magic card and the overpainting into a new style or new art, it's existed for a while. If you've never seen the Snoopy Goifs, which are technically not legal in tournament play right now, meanwhile the average Secret Lair card is, that's a whole different topic, I guess, for another video in a sense, but I can touch upon it here. Magic cards are meant to look like their original cards. I'm pretty sure that this Niv Mizzet the Firemind would not be legal if I were to try and play it in a tournament deck. I don't exactly know where I'd play Niv Mizzet the Firemind at Comp REL. Maybe one day something will be printed that cracks open Dragon Wizards, who knows? But like I said, Wizards of the Coast coming along and introducing Secret Lairs as the de facto way to go about customizing the aesthetic principles of your deck or your game experience has kind of detracted and taken away from artists that for a long time would put in good work and helping to realize the aesthetic principles that people might have wanted about their Commander decks and their casual Magic experiences. But the idea of having someone handcraft the thing I want, the perfect crossover between the two games that I love, to handcraft that in a world where we're surrendering a lot of our creative decisions to a corporation like Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, or in the case of the current fiascos, AI art, I don't know, it feels fucking good to me. Guess this would be a good time to plug her Patreon now, right?
Want to know how I got my arcane powers? I'm glad you asked. It's Neuromancer. My magic used to be so bland, but now, with Neuromancer, my magic is otherworldly. Neuromancer is art, occult, digital and hand-painted designs, elvish and extravagant for your favorite card game. My MTG deck has never looked so fresh. Since I joined as an Exalted Warlock on Neuromancer's Patreon, I received 2 exclusive altar sleeves every other month, with merch for all other months. But wait, there's more. Here are all the other perks of being an Exalted Warlock. But there's magic for all tastes on Neuromancer's Patreon. Take a look. You can also find Neuromancer here, and here. Neuromancer, good for the soul.
I do recommend you get a truly bespoke commander like this made for yourself via a proxy artist or via a real artist. That's a loaded word. I don't mean real as in like that proxy art isn't real art. I mean like physical medium artist. Either way, because it gives you a bespoke play piece that no one else will have. If you want to check out more of Damaride's stuff, she has stickers and tokens that are available for purchase via her merch store as well. And also, as you can see here, she sent me some proxies. She sends these out with each one of her. She sends these out in her orders for merch shipments and similar. Check all of that out in the description below. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet, and I just wanted to show you my Magnuses, my Magnusi, my Crimson Kings. Fucking love it. It's so cool. Look at it. Look how cool this is. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video. And if you like the idea of making your own custom cards, share this with your friends. Maybe sign up to Dharma's Patreon as well while you're at it. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you again soon. Ta-ta for now.